Hello, my name is Rachel Wilson, and I'm a consultant with Kentucky Agriculture and Environment in the Classroom, but I'm also a high school agriculture teacher at Central Hardin High School. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about how I utilize resources from Kentucky Ag and Environment in the Classroom in my actual classroom in a high school setting. So just a little bit of background and some introductions. I do teach agriculture, like I said, at Central Hardin High School, and these are the classes that I teach generally throughout the year. I teach greenhouse, introduction to greenhouse, agri-science, floral design, and landscaping. And all of those classes are geared for 10th through 12th grade. There are some specifics on how we offer them, but they're usually going to be for students who have already had a little bit of an introduction into the agriculture program as a whole, as well as FFA and our general pathways. And then we teach a class which is called Principles of Agriculture, which is that introductory class. That's where students kind of have a glimpse into all the things that we do at Central Hardin in our agriculture department. And so that's what I want to talk to you all about today, is how I utilize some of those resources in my Principles of Agriculture class. So at Central Hardin, we are actually on trimesters, which means most of our 1-credit classes are divided into 2 parts, a part A and a part B. And we have 3 trimesters throughout the year. And so students may have part A first trimester. Some of them don't have part A until second trimester. And then we also have that scenario where some students have part A during trimester 1, and they don't have part B until trimester 3. So sometimes it does make communication a little bit difficult, but it does work well for allowing our students to have exposure to lots of different classes. So since we are on trimesters, our part A focuses on Kentucky agriculture, a nice big introductory unit into agriculture in Kentucky as a whole. Then we also have our FFA unit, supervised agriculture experience, and parliamentary procedure. Then in part B, we start with those SAEs again. We always start all of our classes with SAEs, and we really try to immerse our students in SAEs as well as AET, which is where we keep records at for those projects. And AET stands for Agriculture Experience Tracker, and we utilize that on a very regular basis. So we allow our freshmen to start having some exposure to that and starting to plan what their SAE may be. And then in the second half of Part B, we focus on all of the different pathways that we offer at Central Hardin. So we have a plant systems, animal systems, and an ag mech pathway. And so we have a unit for each of those different pathways. So plant and pollinators, animal science, and we actually focus just specifically on poultry. And then we have a measurement unit where students learn to measure a toolbox or learn to read a tape measure, and then they actually build their own toolboxes. But today, what I want to focus on is the Kentucky Agriculture Unit, because Kentucky Agriculture and Environment in the Classroom has so many wonderful resources that can really highlight agriculture production across the bluegrass. So some of the things that I utilize in this particular unit is, first of all, the posters that you see behind me. You may have seen these in a lot of agriculture classrooms. Jennifer, our executive director, designed those. And there are several different commodity posters. Those are sponsored by the various commodity groups, as well as the Kentucky Ag Development Fund. And these posters are great because they have excellent graphics on them. There's lots of colors, so they add some nice decor for a classroom. But they also offer information that is not specific to data of a particular year. As we know, agriculture data can change every 5 years when that census comes out. And so this actually kind of allows that information to be more general about how that particular commodity or animal is produced here in the state of Kentucky. So I utilize those a lot. And one way that I can utilize those is at the beginning of the agriculture unit, I actually created this agriculture poster scavenger hunt. You could turn it into a paper copy and have your students walk around the classroom. But in all honesty, like mine are up on the wall, it would actually be hard for a lot of the students to read. So this is just kind of a great way to get them kind of digging through those posters at the beginning. This is also a really great assignment to give for all of us ag teachers that are at the state fair at the beginning of the year, and you need something something for your kids to do when you have a sub, and it's right at the beginning of a unit, this is a really great activity that you can do. So there's just some questions where they're actually having to kind of dig through those posters, but they actually have exposure to those posters by a link that I embedded in, well, maybe if I can show you. There we go. A link that I embedded in the actual slideshow. And you can see that it has all of the different posters that we have, and they will actually click on one of those and they can find the information that they need. And it does look a little bit small, but you can zoom in on it and they're able to actually read those different posters. So that's a really great way to kind of utilize these posters in class so that students have an opportunity to look at that. Another activity that I really like to do, particularly at the beginning of the unit, is the linking farm to table game. Some of you may actually have this in a kit if you have purchased a kit in the past. So the linking farm to table game is, and there's a picture. If you notice, it has all of these cards down at the bottom, and some of them are commodities or raw agriculture products that would actually be seen on the farm. And then some of them are a lot closer to a consumer-ready product that students would be accustomed to consuming. So for example, there might be some soybeans, or there could be a beef patty, or tomato sauce, ketchup, things like that. So what I like to do, I really like to take this activity outside because even at the high school level, students don't like sitting in their seats all the time. So at the beginning of the year, or if it's a nice day, I like to take the students outside, and it kind of gives them the opportunity to get up and move around because everybody likes to do that. So normally I'll pass these out and I'll tell students without any direction, I'll just say, you all need to go find a group. Find a group that you have something in common with. And so oftentimes you may have the pepperoni that will meet up with the ground meat because they are both meat products. They provide us with protein. So that might be a connection. But you might also have the pepperoni that would want to partner up with the pizza crust. And honestly, I don't, as long as the group can explain why they have the relationship or why they made those connections, I feel like if they're able to defend it, then there's really no right or wrong answer. But once students have kind of made that and they've explained, give them some time to move around, then I will actually introduce them to one of these meal cards. So this is actually something that a student would be a little more accustomed to seeing on their plate. And so what we want to get the students to realize is how this traces back directly to the farm. And as you can see in the picture down in the lower left-hand corner, that's kind of what has happened. So you'll see that a student will have the beef patty. And so I would have them actually come up to the front and stand next to the student that was holding this card. And then we'll say, okay, well, where does the beef patty come from? And so whomever has the beef cattle card will also come up to the front of the classroom and stand next to the beef patty. And so we're like, okay, well, we have one ingredient. So now let's go to our next ingredient. And so you may have someone who has a slice of cheese. And with the slice of cheese, then you would say, okay, well, do we have cheese farms? And someone would say, well, no, or at least we hope they would say no. And so then the person that would hold the milk would come up and stand next to the cheese. And then the person holding the dairy cow would come up and stand next to the milk. And so we're starting to see how many steps it kind of takes for our food to get to our plate. And before long, almost the entire class is standing at the front, and they're representing some step along the way to get the food from the farm to their table. This is a great way to introduce careers as well, because between all of these steps, there's also transportation. So you have truck drivers that are vital to getting our food from the farm to the places it needs to be. We can talk about processing. You can have a great introduction into how food gets from the farm to your table, and you're able to consume that. And they can understand how important farmers are in their everyday life, because everybody wants to eat this 3 times a day. So this is a really great way to kind of start off the agriculture unit. You can do that ag poster scavenger hunt. And then I like to delve into some of the commodities that are commonly produced here in the state of Kentucky. So after we do the farm to table game, after we do our scavenger hunt, I actually make a packet to pass out to the students. Instead of me having to pass out a different worksheet at the beginning of every day or a different activity, I'll actually pass out a packet at the beginning, and they're numbered at the bottom, so I can just tell students to turn to page whatever, and they can get started on that activity. Generally, what I like to do is we'll look at a commodity group at a time. And I'll start with our virtual field trip series. Now, this virtual field trip series, a lot of you are probably familiar with that. It visits Kentucky farms, and I do have to say it's probably marketed for upper elementary to lower middle school, but I'll tell my freshmen that ahead of time, and they still enjoy being able to see all of the different farms that are visited, especially some that might be a little more local to their particular area. So we can talk about all of the different commodity groups. They can do those visits to all of the little farms. And what I'll try to do is we show the video, they'll do some sort of an activity and from their notebook, and then we try to do a hands-on activity as well. For example, we made butter when we were talking about our dairy unit. There's an apple taste test that is in the packet that correlates with one of our virtual field trip series when it's talking about visiting an apple orchard. The students really love that and being able to be exposed to all the different apples that can be produced in Kentucky. We have a STEM lab when we're talking about the grains and we're making a building product from a wheat product versus a corn product. They're basically making corn plastic. And the students really like all of those different activities. Something else that I like to bring into this unit is talking about the natural resources that we have here in the state of Kentucky. And that is the My Kentucky Home Provides What I Need. I also include those papers in this packet. And so it gives us the opportunity to look at all the physiographic regions that the state of Kentucky is divided into, and talking about some of the natural resources that happen to be in those particular regions. There's a lot of maps. I even actually will give a geography test. We live in Hardin County, so they have to be able to identify Hardin County and all of the surrounding counties. They also have to be able to identify some of the major cities that's in the state of Kentucky. We actually have a test on that because I think geography is extremely important for students to know. But this is a map. They get lots of exposures to maps, so this works really well to teach students about things that they might see in a social studies or in a geography class. So students have to be able to identify all the major river systems in the state of Kentucky. They also will, on this particular map, I don't have them color in the whole county. They'll just put a little dot, but they'll put a dot on every county in the state of Kentucky that has 50% or more of farmland. And they will also put a dot on every county that has 50% or more of forest. And so they can actually see that there's a pretty strong division between where the majority of our farmland is versus where the majority of our forest land is. And we can talk about what resources are available in different parts of the state. There are so many great connections that you can make, and it's just a great way to kind of immerse students into all things agriculture. Something else that Jennifer has done that is a great resource, and this can be found online, which I'll show you where to find that out. But every 5 years, as you all know, the USDA has an agriculture census. 2017, 2022, our next one will be in 2027. And the USDA released that information. It can be a little overwhelming, but students, particularly for getting prepared for their ACT, have to be able to read charts, have to be able to read graphs. And so Jennifer has taken all of that information for every single county, all 120 counties in the state of Kentucky, and have put it into a sheet of paper that looks like this. Now, I printed one, so we have a print shop here in Hardin County. It's an excellent resource. So I was able to send these off and get them printed in color. But if you don't have that, or you don't want to take the time to cut all of the lamination out, because it really did take a while, then this is also available online. So you don't have to have a paper copy. But sometimes kids like to see things tangible and in their hand and not necessarily have to look at things on the computer. So I went ahead and printed these out. But this information is great. It shows, it highlights the county, and it also highlights some great agriculture information about all the different counties. So students can actually have the opportunity to look at what's happening in their county. They can see the impact that agriculture directly has on them. And I'll show you where we can find that information at. Something else I like to do throughout the Kentucky Ag Unit, especially if I end up finishing a little early, or I have a few minutes left at the end of the day, is I love to play the agriculture bingo game or Kentucky Farms Provide What I Need bingo game. These are great. They're cardstock. They're very thick, and so they can be used for many years. But there's two sides to this particular card, and I usually try to keep some green beans or some corn or soybeans, something in my class that I can use as markers and pass those out. So if you have about 8 or 10 minutes at the end of class, you finished up with your project for the day or your assignment, you can pull this out. It's just great review of where our food comes from, what Kentucky provides, what commodities are produced here. And I usually will sometimes give a bonus point out or a piece of candy, something like that. So students also really like that. They're freshmen, so they really enjoy all the different sort of games they get to play. Now, if you are not an agriculture teacher and you don't have an agriculture classroom, these resources can still be utilized in lots of other different classrooms as well. For example, a social studies classroom, having the Kentucky agriculture and the economic impacts, talking about geography in the regions, talking about those natural resources that are available. In math, this charts and data information, which I'll show you where you can find that at, would be excellent on being able to disaggregate actual data that pertains to students and where they live at. And then obviously there's the career connections that can always be made through agriculture. So I do want to show you where you can find this information at. So if you have any questions about anything that I've went over, please feel free to email me. It's Rachel@TeachKyAg.org. I'll get back to you to hopefully answer your questions as quickly as I can. But I do encourage you to visit our websites. The first one is the TeachKyAg website. Let me move this out of the way. So there is a little search bar up here at the top, so you can search different sort of lessons, but we do have this whole programs and lessons section right here where we have curriculum. You can scroll down through here, and this is where you can find all of the virtual field trips. So you can click on that, and you can actually visit and see all of the different activities that are related to that. There is a passport if that's something that you would be interested in doing as well that students can go into. And then here's all of the little field trips down here. So you can see there are lots of different options. Each of these are relatively short, probably around 5 minutes long. So it's a great way to kind of start your class off. The other thing that can be found on here is all the information I was talking about with the data and the charts. If you happen to attend the Kentucky Farm Bureau Regional Teacher Workshops this summer, this was the lesson that we taught in the secondary group. And it's particularly about all of the data that you can find. There is a worksheet. This is one of the worksheets that I actually include in the packet where students can go in at the very beginning. They can color the county that they live in. They can do some research about how many farms are in your county, how many farmers. They can check what sort of commodities are actually produced in their county. And then you start talking about what's the average farm size, what exactly is an acre. And then down at the bottom, they can actually create a graph where they are comparing the number of farms in their county to 4 other counties in the state. And you can do this by making them look at surrounding counties or maybe having them look at counties that might be in different regions. All of that can be interesting for students to be able to look at. Okay. Let me see if I can hide that little bar. There we go. There's also this that's included is this Kentucky Agriculture Snapshot. This is really great because this is Kentucky's overall data comparing 2022 to 2017. This is also really great to pass that to your students and let them kind of look and see if they notice any major changes. Right off the bat, you may notice that in 2017, Kentucky had 75,966 farms, and 5 years later, Kentucky was sitting at 69,425 farms. Now, granted, some of that could be through consolidation of farms, but that's still a pretty major reduction. So that can generate discussions about how land is being sold, how we're going to be able to conserve all of that land. There is also all of the a link to every single county that's in here. There is also a PowerPoint that has been put together to help guide your students through looking at all of the different data. So this is an excellent resource. I know as a teacher, you can probably be thinking in your brain lots of different ways that you could utilize this resource in a classroom. So make sure that you visit our website, look at all the different lessons and resources that may be available there. Something else that I would like to point you to, and this is, it has multiple applications. If you yourself as a teacher are not necessarily familiar with a lot of agriculture in Kentucky, this is a great place to go and do some background work and try to educate yourself on agriculture. But if you have students, those of us that are agriculture teachers, if you have students who are doing those agriculture speeches, getting ready for regional day, this is a great resource to go to because it has all sorts of Kentucky agriculture facts. So all of those different categories that students could be talking about, it is all right here. They can go find statistics that they could use in an introduction. They could find current events. There is also the county ag data that's also in here, and it's organized alphabetically. Something else that's really cool about this particular resource is if I click here on Bath County, it's got the actual data that the USDA sends out. So for upperclassmen, if you want them to look at more in-depth data, they can do that. But there's also farm profiles of actual farms that are in that county. So that's another connection that students may really enjoy being able to look at. And there's also food and recipes. There's student activities that you can show your students. There's even some articles that are printed out that have some comprehension questions that go along with that as well. So as you can see, there are so many resources. I have literally just grazed the surface here about how a lot of our resources can be utilized in an agriculture classroom. I would really encourage you all to visit a couple of our websites and see how you would be able to implement agriculture themes and agriculture lessons into your classroom. And if you're an agriculture teacher like me, there's so many resources that are easy to pull off a shelf, like the bingo games or the linking farm to table games that requires very little upfront loading on your part, and you can just get it and implement it into your classroom right away. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at rachel@teachkyag.org, or if you see a lesson that maybe we need to develop or an area that is lacking in some lessons, please feel free to reach out about that as well. Thank you and have a great day.